there's this huge, powerful wave of migration flowing out of Morocco, heading for Europe. It's a story packed with risk, with desperation, but also with this incredible hope for a different kind of life. A hope that so often ends in tragedy. So, in this explainer, we're going to dig into this really complex human story. This quote from a Moroccan mother, wow. It just gets right to the absolute heart of it, doesn't it? For thousands of families, this search for a better future, it just becomes this permanent, agonizing void. There's no closure, no body to bury, no final goodbye, just waiting.
And that's the central question, right? You have to ask, why? Morocco is often looked at as one of the more stable countries in the region. So why are so many of its young people willing to literally gamble their lives on these treacherous waters? Let's break down what's really going on.
All right, section 1, a desperate gamble. You need to understand, this isn't always some quiet thing happening in the shadows. Some of these migration attempts have become what people are calling an announced secret. They're actually organized pretty openly on social media. It creates this bizarre, surreal mix of a public spectacle and a deeply, deeply dangerous journey. And this is not an abstract problem. I mean, listen to this. In June of 2023, 51 young men, all from the same town, Kalat Saragna, got on a small boat. Their families had scraped together everything they had to pay for this trip, pinning all their hopes on them. And then the boat just disappeared. 9 months later, still nothing. No trace of them. It's just a devastating reminder of the stakes here. So that story of that one boat, it's an absolute tragedy. But it forces you to ask a bigger question. What is going on? What are the powerful forces, the push factors that are driving this mass exodus? It's really a story of how hope gets systematically crushed. And it all starts with one just staggering number. 48.8%. That's the youth unemployment rate in Morocco. Just let that sink in. Nearly 1 out of every 2 young people is out of a job. And this isn't just some statistic on a spreadsheet. It's a social crisis. It creates this profound sense of stagnation. For so many young Moroccans, when there's no job, no clear future, the sea starts to look like the only way out. And you know, the reasons for leaving are layered. It's complicated. Economic despair, that's the engine, right? It's fueled by that massive unemployment rate. But then, that's made worse by a sense of social decay, a feeling that things are just falling apart. And that leads to this really deep political distrust, a total loss of faith that the system can fix anything. And all of that just culminates in this profound psychological hopelessness, where the only logical choice left seems to be to escape.
And those big ideas we just talked about, they show up in people's everyday struggles. People on the ground will point to development models that just haven't worked, to crumbling healthcare and education systems. They'll talk about widespread corruption, this feeling that it's all about who you know, not what you know. You combine all that with a loss of faith in politics and the insane cost of just living day to day, and the pressure to leave just becomes immense.
And there's this really powerful word in Moroccan Arabic for these migrants, haraga. It literally translates to those who burn. It comes from this practice of burning their identity papers, their passports. It's the symbolic act of just severing all ties with their past, making it impossible to be sent back, and trying to build a completely new, untraceable life somewhere else.
Okay, but deciding to become one of the Haragecha, that's just step 1. The journey itself is a life or death proposition, and it's organized by these sophisticated networks that are literally profiting from all this despair.
So take a look at this map. For a long time, the main routes were across the Mediterranean to Spain. But as security has gotten tighter there, a new route has opened up, and it is so much more dangerous. It's the Atlantic route, from Morocco's southern coast all the way to the Canary Islands. We're talking about a journey of over 100 kilometers on the open ocean, usually in these tiny, completely unsafe fishing boats.
And the price for a spot on one of those boats, it's just astounding. Somewhere between $1,500 and $5,000. For families living in poverty, that's a fortune. It's everything. They sell off land, livestock, they go deep into debt. They pull every single resource they have for just one of their kids to have a chance. So who's organizing all this?
Well, the public face of these smuggling networks are the local brokers. They're known as smazuria. And what's wild is that these aren't some mysterious, shadowy figures. They're often well-known people in the community. They'll operate out of cafes, collecting the money, and organizing the groups of people who are hoping to leave.
The process itself is just dripping with tension. First, you contact the smasseria. You hand over the money, that life savings. Then you just wait, sometimes for weeks. You're waiting for a phone call, for the signal that the sea is calm or the patrols are looking the other way. When that call finally comes, you have to rush to some hidden spot on the coast, usually in the middle of the night, and climb aboard a dangerously overcrowded boat.
The psychological toll of this journey, it's just unimaginable. There's this story from a survivor named Amin. He talks about being lost at sea for days. He remembers a 19-year-old on the boat with him who became delirious from hunger and thirst. He just kept crying for his mother. Then, in the middle of the night, he threw himself into the ocean. No one even noticed at first. This isn't just about physical risk. It's about a level of despair that can completely shatter a person.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. Faced with this human tide, Morocco and the European Union have built this really deep, long-standing partnership to try and manage migration. But what does that actually look like on the ground? This partnership, it's a massive effort, backed by billions of dollars. Essentially, the European Union sees Morocco as its key gatekeeper for migration coming from Africa. So it's invested a huge amount of money and resources into this cooperative strategy to control the flow of people.
And just to give you a sense of the scale here, since 2014, the EU has committed over 300 million euros just for migration-related cooperation with Morocco. That money funds a whole range of activities, from border security all the way to development projects.
So where does all that money go? Well, it's basically a two-pronged strategy. On one hand, you've got Pillar 1, border security. This is about giving Moroccan authorities the money and training to manage their borders, fight trafficking, and do rescues at sea. On the other hand, you have Pillar 2, development. This is about tackling the root causes by funding projects to create jobs. But here's the fundamental tension. The security part gets fast, visible results. The development part, the part that addresses why people leave in the first place, that's way slower and much, much harder to measure.
And, the security approach has had a measurable impact. In 2023 alone, Moroccan authorities, with that EU support, prevented over 75,000 irregular migration attempts. They've also dismantled hundreds of trafficking networks. But is it enough?
And that brings us to the final, really critical question. Because despite all the money, despite all the patrols, and all the policies, the flow of people just keeps coming.
And this is the central paradox of the whole situation. The policies are treating the symptoms, the boats on the water. But the underlying disease, that deep economic and social despair, it's not just festering, it's actually growing. The very reasons people are so desperate to leave in the first place are not being solved in any fundamental way.
And so in the end, you realize this isn't just a policy problem to be managed with money and patrols. It's an expression of profound human desperation, but also profound human hope. And that leaves us with a really difficult question to think about. When an entire generation of a country's youth feels like they have absolutely nothing left to lose, can any wall, any policy, or any amount of money truly stem that tide?